been a victim of a financial fraud, somebody trying to lure you in on a Ponzi scheme, or perhaps you got a suspicious text message that asked you to share your OTP, or even a phone bill which charged you for services that you never actually signed up for? Well, if that has happened with you, then you're not alone, because according to RBI's annual report, bank frauds, financial frauds have risen 166% year-on-year in FY23 to 2024. In fact, a majority of these frauds are linked to digital payments, loan payments. In fact, it also says that amount that has been recovered in all of these bank frauds has fallen 46.7% year-on-year. In fact, if we also take a look at some data from the National Cybercrime Reporting Organization, since 2021, victims have lost up to 10,300 crores to cyber fraud. In fact, Delhi police data from the period Jan to June 2024, which is basically in the first 6 months of this year, according to the complaints that have been filed with NCRP, the most number of complaints have been related to UPI-related frauds, UPI-related scams, followed by banking, internet banking complaints, and then fraud calls. And ladies and gentlemen, these have only increased post the pandemic, owing to most of us going completely online, and hence bad actors becoming even more sophisticated. So clearly, this issue is colossal. So the big question then is, how can you protect yourself against such fraudsters and bad actors who seem to be only getting smarter, and they've been defrauding gullible users? How can you spot a potential financial fraud or breach of your privacy? We'll try to decode that over the next 30 minutes with special guests who are joining us on the show. But let me also tell you that you can punch in your questions. You can reach out to us on Twitter on your questions on safeguarding your financial safety. But let's take a look at the guest number one who's joining us now, and let's take this conversation forward with him, Adhil Shetty, who's the co-founder and CEO of BankBazaar. Thank you very much, Adhil, for joining us today on this special show. We believe that BankBazaar has done a detailed report as far as financial digital frauds are concerned. These have been looming large, and like I was saying, that these have only increased post the pandemic, given the kind of technological advancements that we've seen, given the kind of people that are now online. So first things first, I want to understand from you, given the basis of your report, which sectors are most impacted? Talk to us about the scale of these frauds as well.
So, Sumita, great to be on the show. And I think it's so important you're talking about this topic, because it's a national fight. It's a national fight against cyber fraud. Now, everyone knows of an attack. It's like common in our friends and family circle. And these attacks are very, very psychological attacks. I can speak from personal experience. My wife got a call saying they're calling from a police station in UP. There is some FIR being filed, and she needs to transfer 25,000 rupees today in the next 2 hours, or something is going to happen. A colleague of mine got a call saying, I'm calling from the RBI, and you have 1 lakh pending on your credit card. We're going to block all your accounts unless you make the payment now. This is a very, very serious issue. You had great statistics to that. I want to add that the National Cybercrime Reporting Portal, which is where you go to if the money's left your account, and they'll try and stop it. They're saying they're getting 1 lakh cyber fraud complaints every month, and they're getting up to 60,000 calls a day on a number of issues, including cyber fraud. This is a genuine issue. But the important thing, Sumita, is one can protect themselves, right? If they just stay calm and are aware of how they're being attacked psychologically.
Right. Right, Adhil, we'll come to that point in just a bit. But in fact, the narration that you were giving of how one of your friends actually, the scamsters tried to fraud your friend. In fact, I also got a similar call just a couple of weeks back, and somebody was trying to tell me that they're officials from the TRAI, and somebody, in Bombay had lodged a police complaint against me. Then the other kind of fraud is related to UPI. Somebody actually cloning the voice of my father and telling me that he needs money, and I should be transferring that money to that person immediately. And obviously, because I was busy, I was into a lot of things, so I could not really recognize, I could not really discern at that point in time. But talk to us about these kind of frauds also, given the technological advancements that we've seen in AI, and hence the danger of these scamsters lurking around becomes even that much more.
Yeah, so this is another kind of psychological fraud, right? So for example, email goes to my colleague It says, hey, this is Adil. I'm in a tough situation. Please transfer 30,000 rupees to this ID. I need this money in an emergency. Or with artificial intelligence today, someone has mimicked your father's voice. But notice something, Sumita, in both cases, right? The first one where they said that it's someone calling about a loan default, in the other where it's someone who's a near and dear one or a supervisor or a colleague. They're trying to put haste on you. They're trying to say that if you don't do this in the next 1 hour, something will go wrong. They're putting haste on you. They're reaching out to you through a medium where if you go deeper and check for the credibility of the source, an alarm bell should go off. So, for example, the phone call will come from your father, right? The picture of your father might be there, but the number it's coming from is a number you won't know. The sender name people get, right, says Adhil Shetty at BankBazaar. But when they look at the email, when they look at the actual email ID, it's something at xyz.com. So there is a psychological attack. But please keep in mind, right, the system is actually secure. As long as you don't share your UPI PIN, as long as you don't share the OTP of that credit card, there's no one who can touch your money. So the attack is so sophisticated because it's a psychological attack. And that's what we've been trying to educate people against at BankBazaar. Here's what we need to understand, right? There are certain things we can do before the act. We'll talk about after the act, because after the act, you end up in the National Cybercrime Reporting Portal, you end up in an FIR, you end up complaining to your bank in the golden window. But before, right, we have to accept RBI has done, and I'm going to say, a fantastic job in designing a system where unless I share my UPI PIN, unless I authorize and share my OTP, no money can leave my account. That's number one. But the attack is psychological. You have to have a framework in mind. And the BankBazaar report recommends a check framework. When someone is putting pressure, when there is a haste, always check the credibility, look at the sender name, look at the email ID. Best call them and check, are you in trouble?
Yes. Adil, very important that you talk about different types of frauds that are currently operating in the market and the different kinds of ways through which fraudsters are operating, but also help us understand how credit card cloning or credit card credential theft, that kind of scams really work. Because if we're getting a fraudulent call, we can always hang up the phone and check with a source or check with the family members who that fraudster was trying to emulate. But what happens in case of credit card credentials theft? Because we don't know. We might just be approaching a company's ATM, a bank's ATM, and we don't know whether that machine is compromised or not.
Yeah, so credit card cloning or card cloning, usually there is some kind of extra reader on top of the device you're using. So it could be an ATM or POS, and someone has fraudulently installed a device which is reading the credit card details and then noting down your PIN. I think firstly, one thing you can do is use your card and make sure that when you're paying at that POS, at that ATM, there's no extra device attached. This is step number one. Step number two, right, and this is very important, always check to verify that when you get a transaction message from your bank, that you really authorize the transaction. Now, I'm saying this is important, Sumita, also because in India, you're well protected on your credit card. Only an OTP or a PIN or PIN authorized transaction can go ahead. But someone could be using your credit card in a foreign website, and that might go through, right, without a OTP or a PIN being used. Now, the thing is, when you get that SMS, you actually have a 3-day golden window. Provided you've not made a mistake, you've called the bank, you said this is an unauthorized transaction, RBI has said in the 3-day golden window, you're protected. So whether it's credit card skimming or it's an international unauthorized transaction, I feel paying attention to the OTP messages, being aware if a message comes that a spend has happened that you're not aware of, and using the golden 3-day window, right, that the RBI has given you, where you're fully protected, provided you've not shared your OTP, provided you've not used your PIN. I think that could be the best level of protection.
You know, Adil, you've mentioned about several scams. In fact, the report that you've published has mentioned several kinds of scams that occur, whether it's phishing related, credit card related, UPI related, or, just a simple call that somebody is trying to perhaps make sitting in Jamtar or one of these places. But I want to understand from you, you mentioned the National Crime Reporting, portal. Where else can one lodge a complaint in case of a potential fraud or somebody, who's been defrauded? For all of these scams, which is that one-stop shop, which is that one platform, one destination where a complaint can be lodged, and who can one reach out to?
Great question, Sumita. It's so important people know this because people really freak out, right, and get tense when this happens. There are actually three things one has to do. So step number one, complain to your bank. Use the RBI's golden window of 3 days. If you've not shared an OTP, you've not given your card to someone else, you have zero liability if you complain in the golden window, number one. Number two, go to the National Cybercrime Reporting Portal. It's a website. You can use your PAN details, your Aadhaar details, lodge a complaint. They'll take a number of questions and details from you. Lastly, right, you might need to file a police FIR because when the investigation is going on by the bank, they might ask you for a copy of the FIR. You might want to file in a different place. So for all this, right, if you have an FIR, it strengthens your case because everything is written and noted in the FIR. Presumably, the cybercrime department is pursuing that to see what went wrong.
All right. So these three key points that you mentioned, Adil, are very, very important. And we do hope that we've been able to touch upon, the points that are critical, that should be crucial, and that will be crucial for all the users out there. Because like I said, we are going more and more on digital. Technology is advancing. So it is important for all of us to stay one step ahead, rather 5 steps ahead from bad actors. On that note, thank you very much, Adil, for sharing your thoughts with us on this very, very crucial show that we are hosting. And ladies and gentlemen, on that note, let me also bring in the other guest who's joining us to give us a sense of how these frauds are actually conducted. We'll also be taking some of your questions, which we've been getting on our social media platforms. Joining us now is Dr. Prashant Mali, cybersecurity expert. Thank you very much, Dr. Mali, for joining us and discussing this very crucial issue with us today. Dr. Mali, let me first ask you, and I was just having this interaction with Adhil of BankBazaar, and he was, of course, talking about the importance of two-factor authentication, of how we should not share our OTPs and QR codes and other codes as well that we get from banks and other shopping places, and not to enable location where it is not necessary. But even then, even after doing that, we are seeing the scale of frauds only increase. Breaches are increasing. Is this the issue of technology not being upgraded at governmental institutions? Is there a governance delay? What do you make of it?
See, right now, what I am seeing, the frauds which I handle at my end, I see a lot of frauds which involve social engineering. So these fraudsters have set up call centers in this Mewat region and NCR region, and they use social engineering techniques to commit this financial frauds. So if you see this digital arrest fraud, stock market app fraud, or this DHL fraud, that is the courier fraud which is happening, all these frauds have one common thing, that is social engineering and playing psychologically with people. When it comes to police or the government, thing is, it is effectively not playing a deterrent role. That's what my observation is. Deterrence is when you are arresting people, you're not arresting the mastermind. When mastermind is not arrested, he again makes up a gang and starts looting the people. So frauds are happening because there is no enough deterrence in the minds of cyber criminals, and everybody is thinking this as a startup and making call centers which are cybercrime heads and looting people.
Okay, so what does one do in case of, a breach happening? How can one identify a potential scam? And we were talking about the kind of scams that are prevalent in today's day and age. And of course, technology and AI-related technological advancements have only made them more commonplace. But how can one identify a potential fraud?
See, that's the issue. You rightly said that AI has made things difficult. See, you yourself must have seen, you get a lot of those Nigerian scam kind of emails on your email boxes. Everybody gets it. Now, if you see the first, when we used to see the English, what they used to use had grammatical issues. But now if you see, the English is very polished because they use AI. They use AI to target your own personality. So they compose different emails depending on different profiles created with them. So it becomes so target oriented and so realistic that people fall for the fraud what they are trying to do on us. So technologically we still need to do a lot, but awareness is the key. The awareness is not happening. Awareness in vernacular medium, vernacular languages need to be done. It's not happening. Banks are not taking complete onus. Banks and financial institutions, they don't have complete onus on doing. And third and important is, when it comes to remedies, we don't have online dispute resolution kind of mechanism where the remedy is faster and fastest. People are still taking it as traditional crime, and people lose crores of rupees. I have clients who are losing crores of rupees, and they run from pillar to post, and they don't get appreciated. Small petty crimes of theft, where something gets stolen, it gets appreciated more in the police stations. But this huge amount of money lost via cyber frauds or online frauds or cyber scams, they don't get that appreciated. They only tom about the money which gets freezed via 1930, and the money which they are able to recover via that. But that is not actual police investigation, or that is not actual detection also. That is just freezed account, which is the money which is not taken from the target bank accounts.
Right, right. And, when we talk about AI and technological advancements, let me also talk to you, Dr. Mali, about, cyber frauds becoming even more and more prevalent. Also because, some of these are linked to nation states, globally, there is a lot of geopolitics happening. And hence, some of these cyber attacks are launched from rival nations on each other to perhaps block their critical infrastructure.
Exactly. So if you see North Korea, let me take the names of the states because my PhD is in cyber warfare. So while researching, I keep finding North Korea, Cambodia, this Myanmar, where there is a lot of unrest. Now they have ganged up non-state actors sitting there, employing people, kidnapping people and making them sit there and launching cyber attacks on economies like India, and so that they can be crippled. Even China gets involved in all this when they try to loot a lot of money out of here from various scams and then transfer the money to back to China via cryptocurrency route or hawala route. So this is a big financial terrorism also happening behind these scams. So the scams are not plain petty scamsters who are doing the scam. They are highly rooted, and the money often flows abroad. All the trails, all the scams which we investigated right now are flowing. The money is flowing abroad, and for this they are investing in technology, investing in AI, technology like AI, where easily scam can happen, easily people can be fooled. Even two-factor authentication is not enough. Possibly we need to go for multi-factor authentication or MFA, and possibly we can then have a better security then.
All right. And of course, some of the institutions today and some of the companies need to catch up so far as enabling those multi-factor authentication systems is concerned. Two-factor authentication is prevalent at most of these institutions.
There comes a time when your heart calls for you to arise. Plant your feet solid into the ground. Decide your own limits. And then break right through them. Become something more. It's my time to rise.